She mistook a billionaire heir for the grocery clerk. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of a grocery store filled the early morning air. The sliding doors whispered open and shut as customers came and went, the scent of ground coffee mixing with the faint chill of the air conditioning. Under the pale light, Lena Carter clutched her worn canvas bag, counting the few crumpled bills inside. It was another long day ahead. Her night shift at the bakery had ended only an hour ago, and now she needed a few essentials before heading to her second job. She brushed a strand of hair from her tired face and glanced around. Shelves lined with cereal boxes and cleaning supplies stretched down the aisle like silent sentinels. At the end stood a young man in a gray polo shirt, arranging a display of canned goods. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms dusted with faint flour from the boxes. Lena approached, clearing her throat. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Do you know if the coffee on sale applies to this brand too?" The man looked up. His eyes were calm, gray-blue like a winter sky. For a moment, he said nothing, as if surprised that someone was speaking to him at all. Then a slow smile curved his lips. "If you like that one," he replied gently, "you should take two. The sale is unofficial, but I will make sure it counts." She blinked. "Really? Thank you. That is kind of you." He shrugged, slightly amused. "I just like seeing people start the day with coffee instead of exhaustion." Lena laughed quietly. "Then you must see a lot of exhaustion in here." "More than I would like," he said, "but today seems better already." She did not notice the way he studied her, the weariness in her eyes, the determination under it. She just smiled, grabbed her coffee, and walked to the counter. The automatic doors slid open again, letting in a wave of sunlight that painted gold across her faded jacket. Behind her, the man stayed still, holding a receipt in his hand that he had never written. His name was Ethan Hartwell, the heir to the massive Hartwell chain of grocery stores. He was supposed to be at a board meeting, discussing expansion numbers and investments. Instead, he had slipped away at dawn, dressed like any employee, to see the ground level of his family's empire. He had wanted to understand what it felt like to work among the aisles, to hear real voices instead of polished reports. And now, unexpectedly, one of those voices had stayed with him. Outside, Lena crossed the parking lot. Her shoes were worn, her breath clouding slightly in the cool air. She thought of her mother's medical bills, the rent due next week, the dream she still kept folded inside her sketchbook, a dream of opening a small art studio one day. She did not know that the man she had just mistaken for a grocery clerk could make that dream real with a single signature. Inside the store, Ethan glanced toward the doors where she had disappeared. Something in his chest tightened, unfamiliar and warm. The soft beeping of a scanner brought him back to reality. He picked up the roll of paper towels he had been pretending to stock and smiled to himself. That was different, he murmured under his breath. And somewhere outside, Lena whispered to no one, "Maybe today will not be so bad." Neither of them knew that one small misunderstanding was about to change both of their lives forever. The morning sun climbed higher above the small town of Crestfield, washing the grocery store parking lot in gold. Lena Carter balanced two grocery bags against her hip as she waited for the crosswalk light to change. Her mind replayed the short encounter with the kind clerk from earlier. His eyes had been calm, steady, and oddly sincere. For a fleeting second, she wondered what his story might be. Then the traffic light blinked green, and reality pulled her back. She had bills to pay, rent due by Friday, and a mother waiting at home who could barely leave her chair. Her apartment sat on the third floor of a weathered brick building that always smelled faintly of laundry detergent and coffee grounds. Inside, a radio hummed softly from the kitchen counter. Her mother, Margaret, sat near the window in a patched cardigan, smiling faintly when Lena entered. "You are back early," Margaret said. "I stopped by the store for some sales," Lena replied, placing the bags on the counter. "I met someone nice. A clerk helped me find the coffee I like." Her mother chuckled. That is rare these days. Lena smiled, but her heart tightened. Yeah, rare. As she brewed the coffee, she opened her worn sketchbook on the table. Inside were pages of half-finished drawings, faces from the bakery, customers from the late shift, and quiet corners of the city that no one ever noticed. The edges of the paper had curled from use. On the last page, a new sketch had begun. A man in a gray polo shirt stacking cans, his expression thoughtful. She did not know why she felt the urge to draw him, but something about his calmness had stayed with her. The apartment clock ticked toward 9. It was time to leave for her next job. She slipped the sketchbook into her bag, kissed her mother on the forehead, and hurried down the narrow stairwell. Outside, the chill of autumn cut through her thin jacket. The city bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. Lena found a seat near the window, pressed her forehead to the glass, and watched the world slide by cafes, office towers, families heading to better lives. She thought of her father, gone since she was 16, and the string of jobs she had taken since then. Waitress, cashier, delivery runner. Each paycheck went straight to medical bills and rent. Every month was a quiet race against time. At the bakery, the scent of sugar and yeast filled the air. Her manager, Carl, barked orders from behind the counter. "Lena, you are late again." "I am sorry," she said quickly. "The bus was delayed." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You are good with customers, but you cannot keep showing up tired. We need energy," smiles. "If you cannot handle the double shifts, tell me." "I can handle it," she insisted, forcing a smile. Carl nodded but did not look convinced. As she tied her apron, she caught her reflection in the glass case, a young woman with dark circles under her eyes but a stubborn spark in her gaze. Hours later, after cleaning tables and frosting cupcakes, Lena stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. Her hands smelled faintly of vanilla and dish soap. She sat on the back steps, pulling out her sketchbook once more. Between pencil strokes, she whispered to herself, "One day, I will open a small art studio. A quiet place with plants in the window, where people can come and draw." A gust of wind flipped the page. Her drawing of the grocery clerk smiled back at her. She laughed softly. "I should probably learn his name." "Oh." Meanwhile, across town, Ethan Hartwell sat in a glass-walled office on the top floor of Hartwell Holdings. His phone buzzed with bored messages, but his thoughts wandered. He could still hear the girl's voice asking about the coffee sale. For the first time in years, he had spoken with someone who did not know or care about his last name. He remembered the honesty in her tone, the quiet strength behind her exhaustion. "Ethan," his assistant called from the door, "the board is waiting." "Oh." He nodded slowly, standing up. Let them wait another minute. Outside the tall windows, the city pulsed with light. Down below, Lena boarded another bus, her sketchbook clutched close. Two different worlds kept moving, one of power and glass, the other of labor and hope, both unaware they were about to collide again. That night, when Lena came home and switched off the lights, the last thought in her mind before sleep was the same quiet smile from the grocery aisle. She did not know that the man she had mistaken for a simple store clerk was thinking of her at that exact moment, in a penthouse high above the city, wondering if fate ever sent second chances. 2 days later, the city woke under a pale silver rain. The streets glistened like ribbons of glass as Lena hurried from the bakery, umbrella trembling in her hands. Her shift had ended late again, and the last bus had long gone. She sighed, pulling her jacket tighter, and began the long walk toward the train station. Inside her bag, the sketchbook pressed against her side, damp at the corners from the mist. She had drawn through her entire break that afternoon, faces, shapes, and that same man from the grocery aisle. She had added small details this time, the tilt of his head, the faint smile as he stacked the cans. Something about that memory had become her anchor, a reminder that kindness still existed even in exhaustion. As she passed the convenience store on Maple Street, a voice called out from under the awning, "Excuse me, miss, do you happen to know if there is a bus that goes toward Brooklane tonight?" Lena turned. Standing there was the same man, dressed casually again, rain dripping from his hair. Her breath caught. "You?" she blurted before she could stop herself. "You are the coffee guy." "Oh." Ethan blinked, then laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Coffee guy? That is new. I suppose I earned that." "I did not expect to see you here," she said, trying not to stare. "Do you live around this area?" He hesitated a second too long. "Something like that. I was visiting one of our stores nearby." "Our stores?" she repeated, puzzled. He quickly corrected himself. "Sorry, I meant one of the stores where I am helping out. Kind of an internship." "Internship at a grocery chain?" "Let us say field study," he replied, smiling again. His voice carried no arrogance, no hint of wealth, only a quiet calm that felt disarmingly real. The rain intensified. Without thinking, Ethan reached forward and lifted the edge of her umbrella to cover both of them. "You will be drenched," he said softly. Lena felt warmth rise to her cheeks. "You are already drenched." "Then it is fair," he said. They walked side by side toward the train station. The sound of rain filled the pauses between their words, steady and rhythmic. She told him about her 2 jobs, about her mother, and her dream of opening a small studio. He listened closely, never interrupting, eyes full of something like admiration. When they reached the station entrance, Ethan glanced down at her sketchbook peeking from her bag. "You draw?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Mostly faces I see during the day. People no one notices." "May I?" he asked. Reluctantly, she handed it over. Ethan turned each page slowly, his expression softening. "These are beautiful," he said. "They feel alive." She laughed under her breath. "They are just sketches, nothing special." "Everything special starts as something simple," he replied. The announcement for the train echoed through the station. Lena took back the sketchbook, still smiling. "That is my ride." Ethan nodded. "Maybe I will see you again." "Maybe," she said, stepping backward through the crowd. "Thank you for sharing your umbrella." He watched her board the train, her reflection disappearing behind the wet glass. For a long moment, he remained under the awning, feeling the weight of something unfamiliar connection. That night, in his penthouse high above the river, Ethan sat at his desk surrounded by contracts and screens. Yet his thoughts drifted to the girl with the sketchbook. He opened his laptop, typed a note to himself, and stared at the words. "Find out which store she works at. Do not scare her. Just learn who she is." Meanwhile, in her small apartment, Lena spread her sketchbook open across the table. The drawing she had started earlier, the one of the grocery clerk, now had a faint shadow of an umbrella drawn above his head. She smiled to herself, whispering, "Coffee guy." Her mother glanced from the sofa. "Who is that, dear?" Lena shook her head, still smiling. "No one important." But her eyes said something else. Outside, the rain softened into a mist, wrapping the city in silver haze. 2 people from opposite worlds, one rich in comfort, one rich in courage, had crossed paths again. And though neither would admit it yet, the rhythm of their days had already changed. Some mistakes fade with time. This one was quietly taking root, growing into something neither of them could name, yet something that would soon test truth, trust, and the meaning of love itself. The following week unfolded in slow rhythm, like pages turning in a familiar book. The rain had cleared, leaving the air crisp and bright. Lena's mornings began at the bakery and ended at the grocery store, where the same soft hum of conversation and clinking carts filled the aisles. Every few days, Ethan appeared again, sometimes pretending to restock shelves, other times simply buying a single item he did not need, just for an excuse to talk. They spoke about simple things at first: the price of bread, the smell of roasted coffee, the way sunlight hit the glass doors in the afternoon. But slowly, their conversations stretched longer. Their pauses became comfortable. Ethan learned she painted small watercolor postcards and sold them online. She learned he had studied business, but claimed he preferred quiet jobs. One evening, after her shift, Ethan offered to walk her home. The streets shimmered under amber streetlights, and their footsteps echoed softly. "You work too much," he said, his tone half teasing. "I work enough to keep the lights on," she answered, smiling faintly. "Dreams are expensive." "What dream?" Lena hesitated. "A small art studio. A place where people can come and draw without feeling like they are not good enough. Maybe even a free corner for children from the neighborhood." Ethan looked at her with quiet admiration. "You talk about it like it already exists." "Because if I do not, it never will," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Then let us make sure it does." She laughed softly. "You sound like someone who can make things happen." "Maybe I just believe in people who try," he said. They stopped by the Riverwalk, where the city lights shimmered across the water. A busker played a slow tune on a saxophone. For a moment, Lena closed her eyes and let herself breathe. It had been a long time since she had felt this peaceful. "Do you ever wish you could start over?" she asked quietly. Ethan turned to her. "Every single day," he admitted. "But maybe starting over is not about forgetting who we were. Maybe it is about finding someone who sees us differently." Oh, the words hung in the cool air, lingering like music. When he finally walked her to the old brick apartment building, she thanked him for the company. Before leaving, Ethan reached into his pocket and handed her a folded napkin. "Open it when you get inside," he said. Later that night, Lena unfolded the napkin on her kitchen table. Inside was a small sketch pencil lines, quick but sure. It was her, sitting by the window at the bakery, head bent over her sketchbook, a faint smile on her lips. Beneath it, written in neat handwriting, were 5 words. "You see beauty everywhere, Lena." Her heart lifted. She pressed the napkin gently between the pages of her own sketchbook, a new seed planted among her dreams. Across town, Ethan watched the city from his penthouse window, his reflection merging with the skyline. He had not told her the truth. Not yet. But for the first time, his world of boardrooms and figures felt strangely small compared to one girl's hope. He whispered to himself, "One day, she will know everything. And when she does, I hope she will still look at me the same way." Neither of them realized that their quiet evenings and gentle talks had already begun to change the course of both their lives. What started as a mistake had now become something fragile and real, something worth risking the truth for. Autumn deepened across the city, painting every street with amber light and falling leaves. For Lena, the days began to blend together in quiet rhythm: work, home, sketch, and the unexpected presence of Ethan, who had become the one constant brightness between her long hours. They met almost every evening now, sometimes at the small cafe near her apartment, other times at the park bench overlooking the river. He listened when she spoke about her mother's health, her double shifts, and the way art was the only thing that made the world feel soft again. He never interrupted, never judged, and she grew to trust the silence between them. One Thursday evening, Ethan invited her to a community art event hosted downtown. "It is small," he said casually. "Just local artists showing their work. I thought you might like it." She hesitated at first. "People like me do not belong in places like that." He smiled. "People like you are the reason places like that exist." So she agreed. The event took place inside a renovated warehouse, its walls lined with canvases and the low hum of a jazz trio echoing across the open space. Lena wore a simple blue dress, the same one she had saved for job interviews. She felt nervous walking beside Ethan. He seemed to know everyone, yet spoke to no one for too long, always returning to her side. When they stopped before a painting of a crowded city street, she whispered, "It looks alive." He nodded. "Art is honesty. It shows what words cannot." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe one day I will paint like that." He turned to her, voice low. "Maybe you already do." Before she could respond, a man approached them. "Ethan? There you are," the man said cheerfully, extending a hand. "Your father is looking for you." The board members want a few words before the announcement. Lena blinked in confusion. "Your father?" Ethan froze, the color draining slightly from his face. "David, not now," he said quickly. But the man laughed. "Come on, Ethan. You cannot hide forever. Everyone knows the Hartwell heir is here." The word struck Lena like a cold wind. "Heir?" she repeated softly. "Hartwell?" The music seemed to fade around her. People nearby had turned to look. Cameras flashed as murmurs spread through the crowd. Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "You lied," she whispered. "You let me believe you were just like me." "Lena, please," he began. But she shook her head. "You said you understood what it was like to start over, but you have never had to start at all." Her voice broke as she turned and walked quickly toward the exit, her heels echoing on the concrete floor. Ethan tried to follow, but reporters had already closed in. Questions flew through the air, flashes of light cutting through his confusion. By the time he reached the street, she was gone. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady. Ethan stood under the awning of the warehouse, the same feeling of helplessness tightening in his chest that he had not known in years. For the first time, His name, his wealth, his empire felt like a chain instead of protection. Somewhere across town, Lena walked through the rain without an umbrella, clutching her sketchbook against her chest. The pages inside were smudged from the water, the pencil lines of his smile fading away. She did not look back. The truth had found them both, and it left behind a silence heavier than any storm. The next morning, the world felt heavier. Headlines filled every news feed and morning program. The Hartwell heir attends art event with mystery woman. The photos captured Ethan surrounded by cameras, reaching out to someone just out of frame. That someone was Lena. She sat at the small kitchen table, her mother reading the paper nearby. Margaret looked up slowly. "That is him, is it not? The man you have been seeing?" Lena folded the newspaper, unable to meet her mother's eyes. "It was. I did not know who he really was." Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. "Honey, he is still the same man who listened to you talk about your dreams." Lena shook her head. "No, he is not. He had everything, and he hid it. He looked at me like we were equals, but he was pretending. He pitied me." Margaret reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Maybe he was trying to find something real. Sometimes people with too much forget what that feels like." But Lena pulled away. "I do not want to be anyone's lesson." She left for work early, keeping her hood up as she walked through the drizzle. At the bakery, whispers followed her. Her coworkers had seen the same photos. "Lena, was that really you?" one of them asked. Curiosity edged with envy. "It was a mistake," Lena said quietly, tying her apron. "Nothing more?" "Oh." Across town, Ethan sat in his office for the first time in weeks. The glass walls reflected the city below his city, built on his family's name. His father's voice boomed through the speakerphone. "You made the front page for all the wrong reasons. I told you to focus on the expansion deal, not play undercover at our stores." Ethan closed his eyes. "I did not plan this, Father. I just wanted to understand how people live, how our employees survive on what we pay them." His father scoffed. "You are a Hartwell. You do not need to understand. You need to lead." When the call ended, Ethan leaned forward, pressing his hands against the cool glass. He could still see her face from last night, hurt, betrayed. For the first time in his life, his wealth felt useless. That afternoon, he sent flowers to the bakery with a simple card. "I am sorry. I never meant to lie." Lena refused them. Days passed. The city moved on, but Ethan did not. He skipped meetings, ignored calls, and instead began planning quietly. He reviewed charity projects, small businesses, and community programs. If he could not make Lena forgive him, at least he could prove that his words about believing in people were not empty. One evening, he drove to the old district near the river, where abandoned buildings lined the streets. It was the neighborhood Lena had once mentioned, the place where she dreamed of opening her studio. The sign on one shuttered storefront read, "For lease." Ethan stood there for a long time, rain dripping from his coat, and whispered, "Maybe this is where I start over." Meanwhile, Lena found herself returning to her sketchbook every night, though her drawings had changed. The bright lines were gone, replaced by heavier shadows and unfinished faces. One page, however, stood out. It was the napkin Ethan had drawn her on, still pressed between the pages. She had tried to throw it away twice, but could not. Her mother noticed. "You still care for him," Lena exhaled softly. "Maybe I care for the person I thought he was." Margaret smiled gently. "Maybe they are the same person. Maybe he just forgot for a while." Lena did not answer, but that night, she walked to the park near the river and sat on the bench where they used to talk. The city lights reflected on the water like tiny fires. She whispered into the cool air, "Why did you not just tell me?" Far across the city, Ethan stood on the rooftop of his company's headquarters, watching the same skyline. The rain had stopped, leaving the air sharp and clean. He held his phone, a drafted message still unsent. "I have something to show you. Please come see it for yourself." He closed his eyes and whispered the words instead. Two people, separated by pride and truth, were both staring at the same horizon, each wondering if love built on a lie could still survive when the lie was gone. Somewhere between them, fate waited for its cue to bring them together one last time. 2 weeks later, the first snow of winter dusted the streets of Crestfield. The air was bright and cold, and holiday lights had begun to appear on the shop windows. Life seemed to move forward for everyone except Lena and Ethan. Both were caught between what had been said and what had been left unsaid. One afternoon, while returning from her shift, Lena noticed a small flyer pinned to the community board near the bus stop. The title caught her eye: The Everyday Heart, a community art exhibit. Beneath it, in smaller letters, it read, "Hosted by the Hartwell Foundation." Her stomach tightened. At the bottom of the page was a single line: Opening night, Saturday, 7 o'clock. All local artists welcome. For a moment, she thought of tearing it down, but something made her stop. She slipped the flyer into her coat pocket and walked away. Saturday came faster than she expected. Her mother encouraged her gently. "You should go, Lena. Not for him, but for yourself." That evening, Lena walked through the snow toward the converted gallery on River Street. Warm light spilled through the windows, illuminating dozens of small canvases hung on brick walls. When she stepped inside, soft music played, and conversations blended into a gentle hum. A young woman at the reception desk smiled. "Welcome. You must be one of the featured artists." Lena frowned. "I think there has been a mistake." The woman shook her head and pointed to the far wall. "Your name is right there." Lena turned slowly. On the center wall hung a series of her sketches, framed, matted, perfectly lit. Each one was signed Lena Carter. At the bottom of the display was a note: "Art that reminds us that ordinary lives hold extraordinary beauty." Her breath caught. She whispered, "How?" A familiar voice behind her said softly, "Because it deserved to be seen." She turned. Ethan stood there, wearing a simple dark coat, his eyes tired but calm. "I did not ask for forgiveness," he said quietly. "I just wanted the world to see what I saw in you." "You had no right to use my work," she said, though her voice trembled. "I know," he answered. "That is why the entire exhibit's proceeds go to a fund in your name. It will support small artists who cannot afford a place to show their work. You can take it over if you want. I only started it." The words hung between them like fragile glass. Lena looked back at her drawings, the faces she had once captured in stolen moments of hope and exhaustion. People were admiring them, smiling, taking pictures. For the first time, her art was alive outside her notebook. She turned back to him. "You did not have to do this." "I had to," Ethan said. "You told me dreams are expensive. I thought maybe it was time I paid for something that actually mattered." Her eyes softened, but she looked away. "I do not know if I can trust you again." He nodded slowly. "Then do not. Just believe that I meant every word I ever said to you." For a long moment, they stood there, surrounded by the glow of her art. The hum of the room faded until only the sound of quiet breathing filled the space. Then, without another word, Ethan stepped back and let her have the moment. He turned toward the exit, snow melting in his hair as he disappeared into the crowd. Lena stayed where she was, her hand resting lightly against the glass frame of her favorite sketch. For the first time since the night of the reveal, her heart no longer ached from anger but from something gentler understanding. Sometimes redemption did not come with apologies. It came with proof, and Ethan had given her that, without asking for anything in return. Snow still covered the streets when Lena woke the next morning. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, turning her small apartment into a room of gold and quiet. The memory of the night before lingered like a dream. She could not shake the gallery, her sketches on the wall, Ethan's face as he told her he wanted nothing in return. Her mother was already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of tea. "You went," Margaret said, smiling gently. Lena nodded. "He did something I did not expect. Did it change anything?" Lena hesitated, staring down at her hands. "It changed how I see him. He is still who he said he was, but maybe he was also who I thought he was." Margaret reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "People make mistakes, Lena. The good ones try to make them right." "Oh." Later that day, Lena walked to the small community center near the river, the same one that now held her name on a plaque beside the door. The Lena Carter Fund for Local Artists. She stepped inside and saw volunteers arranging donated canvases and brushes. Children and adults were painting side by side, laughter echoing through the bright room. One of the coordinators approached her. "You must be Lena," the woman said warmly. "Mr. Hartwell stopped by early this morning to drop off supplies. He said this place belongs to you now. Lena stood still, her breath catching in her throat. She could almost see him there, sleeves rolled up, arranging paint sets like he had once arranged coffee cans in the grocery aisle. When she stepped back outside, snowflakes were falling again, light and slow. Across the street, she saw a familiar figure leaning against a lamppost. Ethan was there, hands in his coat pockets, eyes uncertain. She crossed the street. "You came back," she said softly. "I was not sure if you wanted to see me," he admitted. "But I wanted to see this. You once told me you dreamed of a place where people could create without feeling small. Now it is real." Lena looked at him, snow settling in her hair. "You made it real." He shook his head. "You did. I only opened a door." There was silence between them, filled with all the words they had not spoken. Then Ethan said quietly, "I am leaving the board. My father will never understand why, but I need to build something that feels honest. I am starting a foundation for community projects, no cameras, no names attached. I would like you to be part of it." Lena blinked in surprise. "Me? You have a way of seeing people, of finding light in ordinary things. I need that." She smiled faintly, the cold turning her breath into mist. "You never stop trying, do you?" "Not when something matters," he said. They stood there in the snow, two people who had walked through pride, anger, and misunderstanding to find a fragile truth waiting for them. Finally, Lena took a slow breath and said, "All right, let us build something good." Ethan's smile was small but real, the kind that reached his eyes. As they walked together down the quiet street, the snow fell harder, muffling the city into stillness. There was no grand declaration, no kiss beneath the falling flakes, only the quiet understanding of two hearts choosing to begin again. Sometimes love was not about perfection. It was about persistence, about showing up when it mattered most. And that morning, as the world turned white around them, Lena realized that maybe mistakes were just another way fate led two people to what was meant to be. Spring arrived slowly in Crestfield, melting the last traces of snow into clear streams that ran along the sidewalks. The city came alive again, full of color and sound. For Lena, life no longer felt like a fight against time. It felt like motion, gentle, steady, filled with purpose. The community art center had become her second home. Every day she unlocked the doors, greeted new faces, and helped children and adults alike rediscover the joy of creating. The smell of fresh paint, the sound of laughter, and the hum of brushes against canvas became her daily rhythm. On the far wall hung a framed photo of the first exhibit, a quiet reminder of how far she had come. Ethan visited often but never made a scene. He helped where he could, fixing shelves, carrying boxes, donating supplies without leaving his name. He was different now. The sharp edges of the wealthy heir had softened. He spoke less of profits and more of people. And when their eyes met across the room, the silence between them was no longer heavy. It was warm. One afternoon, after the last student had left, Ethan lingered by the window while Lena cleaned the tables. Sunlight poured through the glass, turning the dust into tiny golden stars. He held something in his hand, a small box wrapped in brown paper. "Lena," he said, his voice calm but full of emotion, "there is something I have wanted to return to you." She turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "What is that?" He opened the box. Inside was her old sketchbook, the one she had lost the morning they met. Its corners were worn, but the pages had been carefully protected. "I kept it," he said quietly. "Not to steal it, but because it reminded me of the person I wanted to be. I think it belongs with its rightful owner." Lena took the sketchbook gently, her fingers tracing the familiar cover. "You kept this all this time?" "Yes," he said. "It was the first thing that made me see beyond myself." She looked up, eyes glistening. "You could have given it back a long time ago." He smiled softly. "I was waiting for the right moment. Maybe that moment is now." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Lena opened the book to the first page. It was the sketch of the grocery clerk, the quiet man stacking cans under fluorescent light. Beneath it, written in delicate handwriting, were new words. "To the girl who taught me that love begins where status ends." Tears welled in her eyes. She closed the book and whispered, "You never owed me anything, Ethan." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "That is what makes this real." The afternoon light wrapped around them, and for the first time, Lena felt no distance between who they were and who they had become. Months later, the Art Center held its first anniversary celebration. People from every corner of the city filled the hall, their laughter echoing under the warm glow of string lights. On one wall hung a new piece, a sketch of two people standing in front of a grocery shelf, both smiling, both equal. As the crowd applauded, Ethan turned to Lena. "You once called me your favorite mistake," he said, grinning. She laughed softly. "I did. And now?" "Now," she said, taking his hand. "You are the part of my life I would never change." Adieu. The music swelled, and their laughter blended with the sound of celebration. Sometimes fate hides itself in ordinary moments, a bag of coffee, a shared umbrella, a single misunderstanding. But if the heart is kind enough to look deeper, even a mistake can lead to everything you were meant to find. And so, under the soft lights of the art center that bore her name, Lena and Ethan's story came full circle, not a fairy tale, but something far more real. Love, forgiveness, and the quiet courage to begin again.